Welcome everyone. This is Heather Carlisle, and as always, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. This time I want to focus on the best things we want to know about empowering our teens. And I started to study this independently a decade ago because it's so complex and it's so important and we see so many problems. So if you have a problem with trying to help a teenager or any questions, please type it to me because I'm interested specifically in what you need and what you can use. So I have oodles of materials and I have a very long page on my website, and it's under my topic, Keeping Our Teens on Track. And so of course this is an extension of childhood, but given all kinds of things in our society, in our culture, we tend to view teenagers as more capable than they really are. And of course they themselves view themselves as more capable than they really are. And it's our job as adults to keep ahead of them and to keep their interest and to keep that loving, caring, respectful bond, eye to eye, person to person, saying with our attention, I really care about you and I want to know where you're at, and then I'm not going to judge you or criticize you or punish you, which is unspoken hopefully. But I'm here for you, and then, the underlying view is I know a lot more than you, and I know some things that can help you right now. Well, we also, if I were to cut to the chase, and I can say only one thing that can help us be more effective with our adolescents, our teenagers, with all of our kids really, it's who we are and how we live as role models. You know this probably from your own experience, that how you talk under stress or how you behave under stress, it's like, oh my goodness, I just started to sound like and look like my mom or my dad or both of them or something from my childhood. It goes in and it sticks, which means we have a choice. We have a choice how we behave, what we say, and how we live when we are with our children. Now, sometimes we may be out of control or inappropriate. Hopefully, by yourself and for yourself, somewhere walking in nature or behind closed doors, because that's our personal business. While we're raising a child, we want them to see how we conduct ourselves well. And I don't mean that we never cry in front of them or we never get frustrated in front of them, but how we handle ourselves is we don't get out of control, we're intelligent, and we don't lose our empathy. Big call sometimes, isn't it? But that's how we help our kids live that way for the rest of their lives. Also, part of that number one thing as a role model, I want kids to see me as I'm very much an adult. I'm a grandmother. I want them to see that grandmothers have a life that they envy. I want them to see something like, wow, when I grow up, I want to be like that or more. I want them to be able to say that, maybe not all the time, but every once in a while, that how I live my life gets their attention and they like it, and it is literally a positive role model where it gives them a reason to look forward to their life and not thinking that life ends at 20 or 30 or whatever it is. So that's on me, partly because I want a quality of life, but partly because it's my job to show them how it's done. I have several things I wanted to share with you tonight. Practical things. I have many, many things. I just pulled out my systems of research and the underlying concepts that I use when I give a talk or a workshop. It's endless. We have such beautiful information nowadays. But let me give you the big picture that I use. And if you have questions, please type to me. I'm excited when you do that. So this is my way of constructing Erikson's developmental stages of life. And right here in the middle is adolescence, 13 up to 30. Now that right there, that's one piece of data that many people don't know. That adolescence doesn't end when you're 19. So let me show you that one. This is, I added the red because when I give information to people about when and how is best to construct different ways of relationships, I set this as a benchmark. So notice I've expanded the adolescent section to two parts. The early adolescence, which is the teenagers, and the late adolescence, which is the adolescent youths, which is 19 up to 30. So we usually think that once we hit 19, 21, we consider our people as adults. Well, they're not. And you may have heard me mention before, there's a colleague in Austin, Texas, now that we have brain imaging available to us. And her seminal work is a hardback book that thick. And it's mind-blowing, and it's very detailed and very complicated, and I don't want to read the whole thing. Thank goodness she did all the work for us. But the adolescent brain through 30 is growing and changing and shaping in phenomenal ways, which means we want to hang in there with our kids in late adolescence as well as the teenage years, to stand beside them or ahead of them, to keep that bond, that parent-child, adult-child friendship and relationship, not to control them, but to be dear friends, to be mentors, to be guides. We all need a mentor, and you know, this pioneering entrepreneurial country has not placed emphasis on relationships with adults or with neighbors or with mentors or elders. There's a focus on being a rugged individualist or independent and not needy. Some of us know about that very well, but it's against health. Health is we're here to love and be loved, to work together, to enjoy each other, to accomplish great things, because we can do great things when we have people together in partnership. So some of us have a coach or an executive coach or a sports coach or a mentor or a fitness coach or perhaps a counselor at school that actually has time for you, and on and on. The brain is developing so speedily and in such levels of complexity that it's not readily right there where we can see it, because by the time we get to be 18 years old, we've developed a connection with most of our abilities. But to expand those abilities into matureship, it goes into about 30. And if you're over 30, you'll be able to relate to this. That somewhere around 28 to 30, you probably changed a lot. Because at that point, we have this kind of, it may be the darkest time of our life. We have this kind of sense of, oh, who really do I want to be? And what's my purpose and mission? I don't want to waste time anymore. I want to do something that's true to me. So that is the signpost of the first adulthood, when we start, quote unquote, getting serious. Because we've been through those years, that decade of learning by our experience of other people in the world who we are. So notice early adolescence, and notice that the goal for adolescence is fidelity. So I wanted to show you this little description here, which is very tidy and very intense. So Erickson felt that adolescents were engaged in a struggle between identity and feelings of confusion. They're looking for identity, but they're feeling confused because they haven't grown up yet. And that they're learning things, and sometimes they're learning things that are diametrically opposed or don't agree. Identity consists, as he says, of self-descriptions and self-perceptions, and includes one's values and beliefs. Now, these may be consciously taught by the adults around you, or just kind of haphazard gathered together. If the conflict between identity and confusion is resolved in favor of identity, the result is fidelity, the ability to be true to something. To be true to something. To devote oneself wholeheartedly to a good purpose. And in essence, I think of what fidelity means: faithfulness to yourself. And if you've learned the values and beliefs that are founded on goodness and intelligence and peacefulness, that is almost a natural order. Then we have this chart, and it's kind of elegant, and I like to use it, which is there are two real intentions in adolescence. And let me show you here. The fidelity, true to oneself, and an integrated image of oneself as a unique person, which means try different roles, different ways that you can be, and sometimes those roles don't quite agree. And we want to mentor our kids through that to help them see that, and that that's just how human beings are. Get a sense of yourself. Who am I? And the meaning of life in terms of what is meaningful to you or not meaningful to you. So early adolescence is the teen girl or teen boy, and they spend that with their family, their role models, their peer groups, and their out groups. Notice there's no dating here. There are no boyfriends, girlfriends. We skip developing certain parts of our abilities in our brain if we get into one-on-one dating relationships. Now, teenagers don't like me when I say that, but that's the truth that I know. And so then their peer groups, out groups. What is it that I identify with and where I belong? And what are the groups that I don't like and I won't go there? That's the crisis and rebellion. Okay, I'm going to look at the out groups and I'm going to say, nope, not doing that. And I'm going to rebel against that. Now, if we've set up a family environment where the children are naturally bonded and attached, they don't want to rebel against their family. But we show our young ones things in the world that we definitely want to rebel against. And you know those things. You know those things on the street where you live, in the school, in the politics, in the country, in other countries, so that we get that crisis and rebellion energy attached to something that's worth objecting to. And so then who am I and what is my purpose? My purpose is I'm going to object to this and I'm going to be true to myself. Then in late adolescence, this is a commitment to meaning and direction. What do I stand for, and how do I fit into the adult world, which is now a sense of mission. So we've got purpose, which is grow me, mission, how do I serve humanity? So one of the things that gives us cause for concern is when the rebellion doesn't stop, and when the rebellion is against goodness, or the rebellion is against the good of the family tribe. So that rebellion, we can expand that and look at Dr. Neufeld's course on counterwill. So notice, counterwill is the instinct to resist being controlled or coerced. It is one of the most perplexing and troublesome dynamic in dealing with children and youth. This course on counterwill reveals the dynamics controlling this instinct and provides suggestions for how to deal with it. So let's look at the chart here. So identity has two things, a crisis and a commitment. So we want to have a rebellion where we have a crisis to say, no, this is not okay with me. I don't want to be this way. I don't like people who do this. I don't think that this is right in the world. We want our kids to find those things where they say no to something that's really against good. We don't want them to rebel against the love of the family. Now, sometimes the way a family system is damaged, they have to say no to the family system, but we don't want them to say no to all people. We want them to maintain bonded so that they have a sense of self with loved ones. So the crisis needs to be a rebellion, and then the commitment to, okay, this matters to me. This is what I care about. This may be how I want to protect people or how I want to make a difference in the world. So do you see? It's the no and then the yes. So look at this tidy chart. It's very handy. So on the top is identity status in adolescence. Has a crisis been experienced? Have they said no to something? Have they resisted something, rebelled against something? And then on the left side, has a commitment been made? Have they said yes to something where it's like, okay, this is what I believe in? So notice how this works. If they succeed, yes, they've rebelled, and yes, they've made a commitment. What we get is identity achievement. They've experienced a crisis, made a commitment. Cool, that's what we want. However, look at this. If they don't rebel and they make a commitment, that's what we call a foreclosure on identity. They accept what's given by the parents or the social institutions, and there is no conflict with identity. So they haven't learned to stand up and say no. They just say yes all the time. And sometimes those are the nicest people, and they're conflict avoidant. They don't know how to say no when one of the peer groups comes and says, well, you've got to do this if you want to belong. And they don't know how to say no to that. And they end up doing something that can harm them. So that's an undeveloped place. It's a foreclosure on their identity. They closed it too soon. So then look at this. Yes, they've rebelled, but no, they don't have a commitment. That's a moratorium. Postpone your commitment and put your identity on hold. It's being in a stuck place. So I think of those teenagers who rebel heartily and are enraged about something or other. So they're saying no and absolutely no, hell no. And they don't commit to something. That's part of what I call OuchRage, which means they've been hurt and they're saying no and they're angry and they're so invested in pushing against someone or something or some institution that they stay pushing against and saying no and don't even realize that there's something beyond that they could say yes to. Sometimes that's because they're stuck with a woundedness or a stunted ability in some way. Maybe they weren't enriched mentally or emotionally, many other things. Maybe they don't have good executive function. And maybe they've never experienced enough in life that they could say yes, that it felt true to them and safe. So a moratorium is, in my mind, very serious. They continue to say no through life and haven't been in an environment or with the adults who can show them that they can say yes and some options for them to say yes to. So then let's look at the fourth quadrant. No, they didn't rebel, and no, they didn't make a commitment. So this is identity diffusion. They see parents as indifferent or rejecting. It's like they don't care. And they respond to peer pressure, which means the kids raise the kids. Which, I don't know about you, but that gives me chills. Because most of the kids that are going to raise these kids are not the happy, successful, going and blowing and creative ones. These are others that, in essence, they find friends who also reject their parents. So, adolescence, being true to yourself and an integrated image of yourself as a unique person. If our young ones have problems with that, here is the description of counter will, which is will against when they're saying no. And we begin to misinterpret that when children are very young, like the terrible twos. And if you're not sensitive to what the child is developing, you may assume that the child is against you, and it's not true. So I want to show you this directly because this is probably articulated the best in the world. Counter will is a name for the instinctive reaction of a child to resist being controlled. So, and a child at any age, starting at terrible twos, and the wounded child in us, even if we're in our 50s. So it may look like opposition, negativism, laziness, incompetence, non-compliance, disrespect, lack of motivation, belligerence, incorrigibility, antisocial attitudes and actions, and a resistance to learning. And so that kind of covers it. So when we see our people, our kids, our teenagers, our people, behaving this way, we automatically think that that's who they are and they're doing it against us. They are usually very uncomfortable, but nobody has given them a way out or something, some way to walk past that or through it in an intelligent and kind way. I love working with college dropouts because oftentimes they have many of these elements. And to make friends with where they are and to talk about what's missing. If you think a child is lazy, we are not naturally lazy, unmotivated, bored, shut down because it's not safe. There are reasons and there are things that are missing, and it's our job as adults to identify that and to help. So despite the multitude of manifestations, the underlying dynamic is deceptively simple. A defensive reaction to perceived control or coercion. So we don't want to be controlled, we don't want to be pushed around, we don't want to be tricked or bribed or punished in the name of somebody trying to make us do what they want us to do. So isn't that a healthy response? I mean, we don't want to be pushed around. So counter will is undoubtedly the most misunderstood and misinterpreted dynamic in adult-child relations. The simplicity of the dynamic is in sharp contrast to the trouble it creates. For parents, teachers, anyone dealing with children, a perplexing dilemma in that what is most demanded or expected from a child can become the least likely to be realized, which means as adults, we're failing. because it's not the kids. Remember, when they're young ones, in my view, that's on us. That's on us. There's something we haven't provided or something that we've harmed, and we need to take care of it. Counter will can take many forms. It can present itself as the reactive no of the toddler, the you aren't my boss of the preschooler, as balkiness when hurried, as disobedience or defiance, or even as laziness or lack of motivation. A working to rule, to be in charge of the situation. In procrastination, doing the opposite of what is expected. Passivity, negativity, argumentativeness, insolence or belligerence, a preoccupation with taboo or antisocial attitudes within a child. And so then, as I read that list, were you checking in with yourself to say, I've wondered about why I get so stubborn or why I procrastinate. There are good reasons. And oftentimes you get blamed, or you blame yourself, you put yourself down, you think you're inadequate, you think that you're incapable or not worthy in some way. No. It means something is missing, dear. Something is missing for you or the child that you're thinking about. So it may be diagnosed as oppositional defiant disorder. And you've probably encountered the idea that as powerful as the defiance is an indicator of how terribly insulted, wounded, damaged that child or that person was. So this is a nice 5-page document I created on Dr. Neufeld's program about counterwill. And I played a little bit of a clip from him last time, and here you see there's a 10-minute video. And I would be happy to share this handout with you and the links in it. Just ask, email me, text me, call me. So there are 3 factors controlling the existence of this counterwill in a child. Number 1, attachment. We want to stay attached. Remember, love others. Stay attached. Be with your family if they're healthy. Your friends, your tribe. And sometimes your friends aren't healthy enough anymore. Sometimes the tribe that you're attached to isn't healthy enough for you anymore. But attachment. So that lasts for life. But we need our kids to be attached to us and to say yes to us. So, maturation. Have you set it up so that you're 5 steps ahead of however old your child is, so you see the signs where they're up against what they don't know, and you know how to talk to them, to lead them in the direction of the next thing that they can't see, can't know, but you need to as an adult, and to invite them into that direction. But if you don't know what you're doing as a parent, as an adult, ahead of them, then you may feel inadequate, or you may do something that makes it even worse. But inform yourself. Dr. Neufeld's class is right here anytime you want it. And coercion, which means trying to be pushed around, controlled, manipulated. Even severe timeouts are coercive. It's like a punisher or an army general or somebody who is aggressive, just pushing you around to get you to do what they want you to do. They're not respectful, they're not communicating, they're not showing you how it's done, just pushing you around. If we're human beings, that feels wrong, it feels bad, and we don't respond well to it. And there you go. That's the beginning of competition, fighting, war, and bullying, harmfulness. So this little introduction that I've given you today about teens, it goes right back to the toddler, but the thing that bothers us most is this conflict that we get into, or our teenagers leaving and making their life connected with their peers rather than with us. So I hope this has been informative and interesting so that you reach out and look for more, because there is so much more. I have endless hours of information about teenagers and how to beautifully parent teenagers. So please, you can go to my website and search on my website for adolescents or teenagers, and you'll find oodles of links there. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching my videos. I sincerely want to help, and I hope that it makes sense and that it's useful to you. So, know yourself, treasure life, and love others. Thank you.